I just got home. My back door is kicked in, and my girl ain't answering the phone. My son's inside with her and everything. I'm about to go in and see what the is going on.
Okay, why don't you just wait for officers? I'll get them over there.
Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Angila Wilder. Viewer discretion is advised. In the early morning hours of Friday the 13th in November of 2015, a man would come home after work and he found the door to his home kicked in and heard nothing coming from inside the house. Little did he know that his fiance's dead body was right down the hall. 30-year-old Angila Wilder had been stabbed to death. Angila Shannon Wilder was born on September 30th, 1985 in San Diego, California. Hey, I was born in 1985 and I was also born in the San Diego area. Whoa, not about you, Mike? Chill out. Okay. Now, her family would eventually move to Alabama, and then she would go on to graduate from Russell County High School, where she played saxophone in the marching band. Around that same time, she had also completed seminary school for the LDS Church, and on top of all of that, she was a member of the ROTC. She would win a full Army scholarship to go to Alabama State University for their nursing program because her goal in life was to become a nurse. Angela was described as someone who had a passion for helping those in need, fixing what she could fix, and making sure that everyone was healthy and happy. While living in Alabama, she would meet a man by the name of Richie Wilder Jr. The two of them, they hit it off, they fell quickly in love, and by all accounts, the beginning stages of their relationship was very happy, very loving, very playful, and everything was just going wonderfully for them. They even ended up having kids together. And of course, they would eventually get married. They would then move to Minot, which is in North Dakota. And then Angela would continue her nursing school at Minot State University. She was doing wonderfully there, and she was getting really close to finally getting, her degree and graduating and becoming a registered nurse and finally fulfilling her lifelong dreams. Angela also had a knack for interior design and scrapbooking. She loved to travel, and she wanted to travel the world. Just unfortunately, she wouldn't get to do that. Angela was just such a wonderful mother to the two kids that her and Richie had. She was just described as like the best mother that any child could possibly hope for. Very loving, very nurturing. Again, that's sort of like the nurse in her, But at some point, this seemingly peaceful, loving marriage, it quickly turned, and it turned badly. It became very ugly and incredibly violent, and that was all on Richie's side. Richie, he had a temper, a major freaking temper. The marriage would actually end because he would be convicted of domestic abuse against Angela. I don't know how long he served, but he was in prison for a short time, and because of all of this, he was dishonorably discharged from the military. I mean, stupid games, stupid prizes, right? Now, fast forwarding to 2015, Richie Wilder was out of jail, and he was now married to a new woman. Her name was Cyndi. Cyndi was a kindergarten teacher. Now, at this time in 2015, Richie and Angela are going through a very tumultuous, horrendous custody battle involving their two kids. Angela was now happily engaged to a new man. His name was Chris Jackson. The two of them, they had a child together, and she was expecting their second child. Friday, November 12th, 2015. Shortly before 11 p.m., Angela would drive Chris to his night job, which was at the nearby Walmart. Chris gives her a kiss, says, "I love you," says goodbye, and she drives off. and unfortunately, that is the last time that Chris will ever see her alive. He was feeling a bit concerned for her because Angela was very concerned. The night before this, she had said that she heard the front door rattling a little bit as if someone was trying to get in the house, and like noises just outside the home. And so now she's like terrified to be home alone. And that's exactly what she was on this particular night with her 2-year-old, who was at that point asleep in his crib. So Chris, to help ease her mind and a little bit of his, he would call her that night. Between 11 p.m. and 2 p.m., they had a phone conversation whenever he could get away. They would also keep texting each other. And around 2 a.m., the text messages stopped coming from Angela. Now, Chris just assumed that she had fallen asleep. Of course, it was very early now on Friday the 13th, 2015. She was expected to pick Chris up from work later that morning, but she was a no-show. He tried to call her, he tried to text her, but there was no response, there was no answers. So Chris managed to find another way home. When Chris got home, he noticed something extremely concerning. Now, the family would typically use the back door to enter the house. They didn't really use the front door much. So he went to the back door, and it was kicked in. Like, it was obviously someone had kicked the door completely in. It was broken. And he sort of like looked in. He didn't hear anything. He didn't hear anyone making any screams. He didn't hear the baby crying. At this point, he then calls 911. So this is the call that he made.
I just got home. My back door is kicked in, and my girl ain't answering the phone. My son's inside with her and everything. I'm about to go in and see what the is going on.
Okay, why don't you just wait for officers? I'll get them over there.
Now, later on, he would be criticized for, well, why didn't you just go in immediately to make sure at least that your baby is okay? Essentially, he would go on to say he didn't want to risk startling an intruder and causing more issues. I mean, ultimately, only he knows why he didn't go in, but that's just kind of the story he gave. But it would not have mattered at any rate, because what was done was already done. The police arrived very quickly, and then they entered the home cautiously, and slowly kind of maneuvered their way around. They first they walked through the living room, and then they went towards the hallway, and then the first room they came to was the baby's room. They walked inside the room, and inside the crib was the 2-year-old boy, and he was unharmed. He was completely safe. He was asleep still, no crying or anything. Then they walked down the hall some more, and while they're doing all of this, nothing seems out of the ordinary. Nothing seems like a struggle took place, anything like that. They walk into the master bedroom, and they see the bed is completely empty. There's no one sleeping in it. There's no sign of Angela. There's really no sign of an actual huge struggle taking place. I mean, the sheets were off, but that would just indicate that she was sleeping in it recently. And then they had peered around the corner, and lying next to the bed was the very badly stabbed body of Angila Wilder. Later on, the coroner would determine that the 30-year-old woman had been stabbed at least 40 different times, and kind of just all over her chest and her neck. Typically, something like this would indicate like a crime of passion, so someone that probably Angela knew. When they tell Chris, he reacts. I mean, he immediately begins to cry. He comes off as very angry, a whole like array of emotions, and police would say that his reaction seemed really legitimate. It didn't come off as robotic or rehearsed. He reacted the way a person should have reacted to this situation. Not to mention, they would establish that Chris had an airtight alibi. Walmart has tons and tons and tons of cameras, so he was caught all throughout the night on camera There are several images of him working all throughout the entire night, so they know for sure he wasn't the one to physically stab her. But he was still brought in for questioning right away. I mean, that's just sort of protocol, of course, because you never know. Maybe he hired someone. At one point in the interrogation, the detectives leave and he's by himself. He gets on his phone and he calls someone, a friend or something, and he says this.
Richie's probably the piece of shit who did it.
So Chris is pretty confident that he knows who did this to Angela. So police are now curious. They want to find out about, this guy, this Richie Wilder. Who is he? Where was he? So they bring Richie in for questioning. And one of the very first things they say is, Angela's dead. Here's how he reacted.
And I'll tell you, Angela's dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No emotion, no tears. Nothing. Whole lot of nothing. Just very odd. But at any rate, they asked for his alibi. He said that night he had been working from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Well, we know she was alive during that time. So where were you the rest of the evening? Well, I was at home. I was asleep in bed with my wife. She can tell you. So they bring in his wife, Cyndi, for questioning, and she says, I woke up several times in the middle of the night to take care of the baby who was crying, and every time I woke up, Richie was right there in bed next to me, passed out. He was here all night. When police asked her, do you know anything about this murder? She just said, I don't know anything. So they go back to their investigation. Police obviously determined that the door was kicked in, so yes, forced entry was certainly used here. They also determined that Angela put up one hell of a fight because she had several broken nails, and so it appeared that she had at least scratched the shit out of whoever was doing this to her. You go, girl. What's interesting to note about that is when police brought Richie in for questioning, they noticed that he had a fresh-looking scratch on his cheek. He said, oh, yeah, I got that from, play wrestling with my kid, so not from murder or anything. But, of course, the coroner would scrape underneath all of Angela's remaining fingernails to see if there was any DNA found, which would take some time. Investigators, based on the crime scene, determined that Angela was likely asleep in bed and either woke up when she heard the door being kicked in or didn't wake up. But regardless, she was still in bed when the attack happened, and then it finished on the floor. So that's when she was putting up a fight and, probably screaming and kicking and fell off the bed, and then she just kept getting stabbed. So next, police were able to get a warrant to search both vehicles that belonged to Richie Wilder and Cyndi Wilder, just to see if there was anything they could find. And lo and behold, in their red car, there was something. Police, with the greatest eyes of all time, noticed one very faint, tiny, brownish, clearish spot on the passenger side door. They swabbed it, they tested it for DNA, and guess what? That tiny little thing was blood, and it was the blood of Angela Wilder. Around that same time, they got a hit. There was DNA underneath her fingernails, and they matched Richie Wilder Jr. Her blood in his car, his DNA underneath her nails. Uh-oh, not looking good, Rich. Around this time, when police were questioning friends and family, there was a really chilling story that one of her family members told. So, and this happened a while before any of this. So this wasn't a recent thing. But one day, one morning, Angela woke up. She walked out into the living room, and sitting on her couch was Richie Wilder, just sitting there, creepily smiling at her. This is after they've broke up and everything. And he apparently looked at her, smiled, and said this. See, I told you I could get to you if I wanted to. That's fucking, Jesus. Okay, that's terrifying. So an arrest warrant is issued for Richie, and they would find him at his little gym getting buff, and they slapped the cuffs on him right then and there and said, "You're under arrest and you're being charged with the murder of Angila Wilder." Now, he wasn't talking. He wouldn't say anything to detectives. He wasn't budging. But then a few months later, he says, "You know what? I'm ready to talk because it wasn't me. I had an accomplice, and the accomplice did all the murdering." And Richie was ready to reveal the accomplice. So he sits down with police, and he tells them a story. Richie admits he was there that night. He was in the bedroom when Angela was murdered. But the person who actually stabbed her, guess what? It was Chris, her fiancé. Richie would go on to say that Chris had found out that Angela was having an affair, and that really pissed him off. So he would then go to Richie and tell him, "Hey, we can catch her in the act sleeping with this dude, and when we do so, it'll be easy peasy for us to get custody of, our respective children from her. So are you in?" And Richie, I guess, is like, "Yeah, I'm in." Richie says that at approximately 2:15 a.m. that morning, he picked Chris up from the Walmart. They drove to the house, and they had walked into the master bedroom. They saw Angela lying in bed, and next to her was what looked like the shape of a person. Turns out, it was a body pillow. That's what it was. Something Chris would have known. But Richie said Chris was already in a rage, so he grabbed a knife and he just started to stab and stab and stab Angela, and she was screaming and she was flailing around, and at one point Richie tried to step in to be the hero and save her, and then she scratched him across his face, and that's how he got the scratch. And then, I guess just like that, it was done, and so Richie drove Chris back to work, and they just went about their business, I guess. Okay. Well, Richie, why didn't you say anything right from the beginning? Because Chris was threatening me, and he was threatening to kill my family and my kids. But now I'm ready. Now, I can't. Now I have your protection, police. Hi, except there's one very big problem. They have already checked the CCTV footage from Walmart. And again, he is caught many, many times, Chris, working at Walmart. Especially and in particular between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. And Richie was like, "Well, I picked him up." And then they're like, "Richie, no, you didn't. We see him at work." And then they're like, "Are you done with this story now?" And he just goes, "Yeah, I'm done. It's not true. Thanks for wasting everyone's time, Rich." So he went to trial, and the jury would be back in less than an hour, and they found him guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And that is it. I hope you found this case interesting. Just kidding. Turns out, breaking news, there's more. Immediately after the trial, his wife, Cyndi, was just a wreck. She's like, "How am I going to take care of all these kids on my own? I'm going to need help from everyone." And she was just all over the place. And Cyndi again swears, "Richie was home that night. I saw him. He was in bed with me that night. He could not have done this." Well, sorry, but he did. At some point, she reconnects with an old friend/fling by the name of Matt Walters. They start to hang out, they become close friends, and basically she treats Matt like a confidant at this point, and so one night they're just sort of talking about the murder case, right? Matt had said something to her like, "Why on earth would Richie use a knife anyway? Why wouldn't he just use a gun? Because it would have been quicker and easier, so why?" To which Cyndi said, "Well, that wasn't the original plan. The knife was a backup. It was supposed to be a gun. Uh-oh. Whoops. What did you just say, Cyndi? Matt, who had a criminal history himself, he went to police pretty much right away. He told them everything she said, like, listen, I think she might be an accomplice to this murder. I think she might have obviously helped plan this or something, maybe even helped. So police say, are you willing to let us put a wire in your car and maybe you can get something out of her? And he's like, yeah, that's fine, let's do it. So, one day they're hanging out again, Matt and Cyndi, you know, he picks her up and then she gets into the car and they start talking about the case again. And, well, Cyndi would go on to say this, and let me read. I'm proud of Richie, but I'm just pissed that he got caught. He got sloppy and impatient. We had the murder planned for 2 fucking years. He came home after and said it got messy and he got scratched. I told him I would have gone back and cut her fingers off and fucking burned them. I would have then lit the house on fire. Girl, what the are you good? Like, you weren't, I mean, they kind of considered you a little bit of a potential suspect for like a minute, but Jesus, you're a crazy ass. You just like vomited out this whole ass confession and you're screwed. Anyway, she would go on to tell him that Richie was so frustrated with Angela and he hated her. He was so mad at her. So they kind of concocted this plan. And she would keep going. She said that in the kind of days and weeks leading up to the murder, Cyndi herself would follow Angela around and basically stalk her to figure out her normal routine and her movements. And then, after the fact, she helped Richie clean up stuff and hide the weapons and all of that. She's a fucking kindergarten teacher. My God. She's teaching kids how to count to 3 and then she's helping a dude clean up a murder knife. Like, ugh. Anyway, police would arrest her and they would charge her with conspiracy to commit murder and then also accessory after the fact. The prosecution went to her team and said, we are willing to give you a deal where you would get 25 years in prison max. You could even get out sooner than that based on, you know, good behavior and whatnot, and you'll have a chance to live the rest of your life. She said no. That was a big mistake because she would then go on to sign an Alford plea. And this was because she felt the jury would have had enough evidence to convict her of these charges, so she wanted to take her chances with a judge being more lenient on the sentence. Nope. Oh, nope. He gave her life in prison without the possibility of parole. Damn. Stupid game, stupid prizes. Again. And now these poor kids are without their mother, they're without their father. Now they're in this whole convoluted mess of who the hell is raising us, and they're being raised obviously by, Chris is raising Angela's kids, I believe. I think other family members are involved in raising the kids, but it's just like all of it did not need to happen. This was so, and Cyndi had the chance to stop this. She knew this was going to happen. She helped him plan it. She didn't have a genuine motive to do this, but she helped because she's psycho, I guess. But still, she could have ended this, but didn't. So, rot in prison. But at any rate, that is now officially the end of this case. I hope you found it interesting. It's a wild one, for sure. If you want to see shorter form content from me, you can head on over to my TikTok. If you don't follow me already, it's Making a True Crimerer over there as well. I have well over 2,000 cases that you can scroll and watch. And yeah, let's go ahead and give me a follow. If you have a case you would like me to cover, you can email me at mikey@truecrimerer.com. The email will be listed below in the description. But first, please go to my link tree, also below. go to my case list and just make sure that the name you want me to cover isn't already on there. There's like 4,200 plus names. And you can search by hitting Control F on a computer or on a phone, hit the 3 dots, then hit Find and Replace, search for the name, and if you don't see it, then email me. If you do see it, you don't need to email me. It's already on there. I choose the cases I cover at random, so pretty please be patient, and be patient with the email responses as well, because I get a lot. Lastly, if you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch, Making a True Crimerer merch with t-shirts and hoodies. It is getting into colder weather season, so you might want a hoodie with different sayings. And we have like rainbow font options, and some of it you can customize the words. We sell wine glasses, we sell mugs and other things. So blah, 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 blah. In the link tree below, you can find the merch store. Okay, that is it for this stuff. Yeah. And until next time, true crimerers. Well, I said, hey, yeah, 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 crimerers, hey, yeah. Oh, fuck. I'm not going to figure out the ending thing, probably ever, so...